This is the most Brooks loving episode that we've ever done. If anybody's listened to this show on a number of occasions, they know that we do tend to bash on Brooks quite a bit. Jake's not here to back me up on this. I guess this is the Brooks show love episode.
I love Brooks. You know, I'll take the flack. Greg, you're in the alumni tier.
Yes. I've been on the team now. This is my 5th year. Brooks has been really good to me. But as I started really getting into running, Brooks has been is the only brand that I'll wear when I run.
What happens when 3 runners
from different parts of the country
with different running stories
all get together?
Pure
RunTok
madness.
So listen in as we talk about all things running related.
And some things that maybe aren't running related.
As it's bound to be a good time. This is
RunTok Live. Welcome to another episode of the RunTok Live podcast. Chase, this is the 2nd episode in a row that I've introduced.
Yeah, that is. I'm glad you picked up on it because we didn't actually discuss it before we started recording like we normally do. So we were on the same wavelength, so we were all good. We didn't have Jake here to get in the way or interrupt us.
Well, see, and then when he listens to the podcast, it's going to sound so smooth for once.
Yeah, for sure.
Just saying.
No, Jake is not with us tonight. He's actually stuck traveling. He was supposed to be up in New York for some business stuff, right? Was it business or family? Business stuff. Mm-hmm. And he got a little delayed getting back, so he couldn't make tonight's episode, so it's just us.
I'm a little jealous because I feel like New York's weather is way better than the Texas heat and or maybe even his Florida weather right now too.
Probably. I mean, once it gets hot down there and humid, I'm sure you got the same problem.
Yeah.
It hasn't been too bad here yet. We're definitely finally like warmed up for good, I think. You know, I had to break out the cold weather gear like one final time like a couple weeks ago, but we're good. I'm in the Midwest though, so you never know. It'll be 65 and sunny one day and then 25 and blistering winds the next. So hard to tell.
Man, I feel like that's better than just getting constant heat because like it's in the 80s all week. Like,
I mean, it definitely keeps you on your toes.
That's true, and it's great for heat training. But man, what I wouldn't give for like another cold front, you know, before summer starts. Oh, but Chase, I wanted to talk. So you, on a whim, signed up for, is it a half or a full?
Yeah, no, I signed up for the half. So I signed up for the Indy Mini 500, which is the half marathon that accompanies the Indy 500. So it's actually one of the biggest half marathons in the country. I think it's in the top 10. It's like 6 or 7. It's up there with like the New York half that you did a while back. But yeah, I've wanted to do it for a while, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it work. So like literally on the last day that you could possibly register, I got in.
Dang it. So you get to run on the Indy 500 track, right?
Yeah. I'll do a full lap around the track. And they set it up. You're supposed to, they set up cameras so you can stop and kiss the bricks like they do in the 500. They got milk at the finish line and the whole deal. So it's a lot of fun. I've done it before. I think only one time. I feel like I've done it twice, but I'm like looking back, I'm pretty sure I've only done it one at a time.
Man, well, you'll have to report back because that sounds so cool.
For sure. I because I signed up so late though, like I didn't get into like seating, so I'm not sure where I'm going to be placed at in the corrals. Like obviously I'd like to get further up towards the front, but I'm still in contact with the race directors and stuff like that, trying to get up there, but I'm not sure. So it'll dictate how well I actually run or how much I actually compete, but it'll be fun regardless.
Well, speaking of fun, our guest tonight is one of the most fun people I know. He is an Equinox instructor, a marathon runner, a film actor, producer, cool dude, and he's on the Brooks team with me. RunTok Live, please give a warm welcome to Greg Cohen.
Hey, thanks. I like that you said the most fun person that you know, but you probably know plenty of other fun people.
Listen, Greg, every time I am in the same room with you, you are planning some type of adventure, some group activity at a bar or a dance, or just getting into, all kinds of mischief. So I
I
think you're
do
fun.
like to do some social coordinating here and there. So yeah, I guess so for that point, for sure. I like everyone to have a good time. So that's kind of my jam.
Well, that's what the Brooks team's all about, right? Run happy. I mean, coming from Carolyn, who always posts videos of her just having fun, that's got to be a huge compliment.
I'm going to take it as such. Yeah, for sure.
So, Greg, before we get into the Brooks team and your Amazon documentary, tell us a little bit about you and then how you got into running.
Yeah, I mean, where do you want me to start from? Let's see. I'm from New York originally. I live in Los Angeles now. I've been here about 20 years. I didn't get into running when we talk about running, like distance running, until about 7 years ago after I was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition called scleroderma. It was kind of my thought about how to raise awareness about the disease and to bring more attention to it without there being kind of a celebrity face to the illness. Being at the time I was 37 or something along those lines. I realized my sports career or dream to be a professional athlete was coming to an end as I was continuing to age. So I figured, what could I do where hopefully, my body could sustain doing it for a little bit. So I turned to running. Growing up, I was an athlete. I wrestled in college, and then I played soccer and baseball and all those sports growing up. So I ran, and I was mostly a sprinter, but not a distance runner. So I decided, what's the best thing to start with, and I decided to do a full marathon rather than do a 5K, a 10K, or even a half. So I ripped the band off. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So I've run 10 marathons since my first total, so, and a bunch of halves, and to this date I still have never done a 5 or a 10K, believe it or not. I might actually do my first one in Memorial Day weekend. I might do a 10K with one of my friends here. But yeah, for some reason it's just those larger races, and I'm like, oh, I got to do those instead. I don't know why.
So what was your first marathon?
Los Angeles. Los Angeles was my first, and I did that 3 years in a row before I started branching out and traveling to do races and things along those lines. Los Angeles has changed the course since I ran it. I don't like the course now because it used to be, it was always a point to point. It started at Dodger Stadium and ended at the beach in Santa Monica. But then it turned into like a point to point, and then, back around to the second point. So basically it would go start at Dodger Stadium. It would go through Century City, then into Brentwood, and then it would be like an out and back to Century City, which was awful because it's the worst part of the course. It's all hilly, rolling hills towards the end, and LA is not, even though people think LA is flat, it's not flat. So not one of the best courses. So I only did that one once, and that was literally the end, we'll call it the end of the pandemic, 2020 or whatever it was, 2021, in the winter, like November, they pushed it because normally it's in March. So I had done it basically LA 2 times in a row at that point, the old course and then the new course. Yeah.
Yeah, I've not heard that LA is an easy course from, I don't think, anybody.
No, it's not one of those you try to, I mean, I'll try to maybe do it again and try to PR the course, but it's not where you're going to try to PR for yourself, I don't think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you pulled off an awesome PR at Houston this past year. And I'm so envious of you because you pulled off a sub 4-hour marathon with not a huge, like, high mileage training. So you got some running talent, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I did. That was, I want to say Houston was one of my closer to high mileage training. I mean, I got up to about 18, I think was my longest run. I had some issues closer towards the race. I had gotten sick, I think, one of those weeks. So my last long run, I had skipped almost 2 weeks and then did an 18 miler. And I didn't go in with like super high hopes. I was on a PR streak all of 20, what are we in, 2024 now? So all of 2023, I was PRing every race I ran because I actually started training properly. I know Carolyn and I started talking about it a little bit because I started doing heart rate based training. And I think every race I ran, I hit a PR, but I couldn't break 4, which was because up until that point, my longest runs would be like 15 miles before a marathon. And then I'd go out and I'd run like 4:18 every time. And I'm like, God damn it, I don't want to run 4:18 anymore. And my coach was like, you definitely could break 4. And he even thinks that at some point, if I keep training, I could qualify for Boston, which my age group is still tough at 320. Plus you need a buffer now, obviously. But yeah, I got real close when I ran London last year. I was like a minute and a half off. And then I ran San Francisco in July and I was 32 seconds off of sub 4. So thankfully Houston is a flat course for the most part. And it was very kind to me that day. It's like 347 and change. So I was just hoping for like 358. So yeah, that was definitely a highlight for sure. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, of course. So I actually wanted to ask you about your heart rate training.
Mm-hmm.
You did the whole like lab, blood work, things like that. So what was it like actually getting, your lactic threshold paces and working kind of with a doctor?
Yeah, he's not a doctor. The coach that I use, his name's Gareth. He's just a science, he's an endurance coach, but really big into the geeky side of the science and stuff like that. So I'd go to his lab and I'd basically, run on depending on what the weather was like, we either did it inside on a treadmill or we would do it outside. Did my lactate threshold so I can get my true heart rate zones. I think that's the one thing, because everyone does 220 minus my age, and that's not necessarily your max heart rate depending on your fitness level. And I think after one of my races last year, we redid it because as you train more, your heart rate gets more efficient, your lactate, your ability to, to burn and so on and so forth is improved. So you have a higher threshold. So it was kind of neat because when I first started doing heart rate training, I don't know how you guys are when you run, but if you put on a heart rate strap and you're supposed to run zone 2, which is is easy, and your heart rate's already like 10 beats above that, he's like, you need to walk. I'm like, walk? But I don't feel like I'm tired. I don't want to. So I had to learn, that was the hard thing. It was very humbling because I would go out my first few slower runs and I'd literally have to walk, jog, or jog, walk. And it was very humbling until I was able to figure out how to control my heart rate on my slower intensity runs and even my higher intensity runs, because obviously if I'm supposed to be in a zone 3 or even a zone 4, I'm pushing maybe into zone 5 and I have to figure out how to pull back. So it's a really interesting thing. And I actually, when I first started, I would say for half of last year, 3/4 of last year, I'm like, this doesn't work. And then I started seeing all those improvements in my races and I'm like, well, I guess I'll keep doing it now. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and you've gotten way faster. I love seeing analytics. So I'll look at people's runs and yeah, your heart rate's really low and your easy runs have gotten faster. So
yeah, I mean, I have to be honest, I haven't been running much lately. I've been in this weird funk. So my heart rate's going to skyrocket back up once I get back, put my heart rate strap back on. Because the last few runs I did was just with my Garmin and not my heart rate strap. So, and there's obviously some differences a little bit from just having your watch on versus wearing a strap. But yeah, it's really interesting and fascinating how you can see if you're someone who's into that science stuff and just the analytics, like you said, the kind of how things can improve over time. It's really interesting. Yeah.
I've done the VO2 max test where you kind of run on a treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
And that was interesting. So I'm claustrophobic, fun fact. So when they put on like the gas mask looking thing, I lasted like a minute. I was like,
Really?
yeah. They were still able to get kind of an accurate reading, but it was a mess.
Yeah, I've never done VO2 max. I really want to. Thankfully, I'm not claustrophobic, so I might be able to make it through. But there's just something, regardless if you are or not, I feel like you have something on your face and you're running or bike. A lot of cyclists do it too, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I see those videos of those people that are all like hooked up like they're what's his name, Dolph Lundgren in Rocky 4, you know, in the Russian science lab, and I'm just like, how do you do that? I don't even. And a lot of times people have the things stuck to their chests everywhere too on top of it. I'm like, what? You're like Predator about to bust out of his spaceship right now. I don't understand what. And I've never done anything like that before. Like I've never been much into the analytics. I'm more of like a, I don't know, purist, I guess. I'm not against it. I don't have that opportunity very often. So, not saying I wouldn't try it, but if I got the opportunity, it just looks insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I know our gym offer like one of our training tiers of trainers in certain clubs that I work at Equinox, they offer VO2 max testing. I've never done it. It's also not like the cheapest thing in the world either. I think if you do it somewhere in a lab, like my lactate threshold stuff wasn't like super expensive, right? I'm getting pricked and he's reading like blood results right there. So it wasn't super invasive and using all this like massive technology, like hook me up to a machine and 2 hours worth of whatever. It's just cool. I mean, I don't know right now at the age I'm at 45 and, you know, unless I'm going to somehow try to become a competitive runner, I don't see the benefit, right? Maybe for fun, if someone's like, you want to do one, I'll do one. But yeah, I think being a purist is good too, also.
Now, again, like I said, I just don't have. I've never been in a situation where I've had access to that, so it'd be hard to. At this point, I think a few years ago, I probably would have, scoffed at it, laughed at it, even if it did pop up as an opportunity. But at this point, if I got the opportunity, I probably would go for it just to try it out, just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to find the picture on my phone. It's somewhere, but there's a picture of me on the treadmill, and then I'm strapped into this like backpack looking thing. And I was trying to see if they had the mask, but it was just, I don't know. I don't know if it was just like an off day or something, but you've got a ton of stuff on you just for that training.
Yeah, it's got to be distracting, I would think, also, right?
It is. And then you have somebody holding, I think I know they're holding a stopwatch that they can move the treadmill at different speeds, different like inclines. And then you have somebody else holding a clipboard. And I'm like, I can't, there's too many people, too many things in here.
Yeah, that would make me nervous, I think.
I'd rather get pricked at this point, and I don't like needles. I'm like, you know what?
Nobody likes needles. Like I had this discussion with somebody a while back. Like, of course, I have to get my biometric test done every year for my insurance and whatnot. And one year, the lady was like, "You don't like needles, do you?" I was like, "Nobody likes needles." Like, and she's covered in sleeves, right? She's got sleeves all the way up and down her arm. And she's like, "Sure, we do." And I'm just like, "No, you don't like needles. You like tattoos. Like you don't like getting stabbed repeatedly. Like if I put it like that, you're not. It's not okay." But I've learned to live with them.
So speaking of tattoos, Greg, you got a cool one on your calf, and that was in, yeah.
Which one are you referring to?
The Brooks, the Find Your
Okay. Yeah.
And
so
that
it's
was
fun. No, go on. Sorry. No, it's funny because I was leading a run club at work the other day, and someone's like, "Wow, you really bought into Brooks," and I'm like, "Well." I said, honestly, it's the logo. I didn't get Brooks written across my leg. I said it has meaning, right? Because the tagline of "Follow Your Path." It's literally about going after what you want in life, and kind of going your own direction versus what everyone thinks you should be doing, and so on and so forth. So the logo and everything, it was just really cool and it resonated with me. So everyone, because people are like, well, what happens if you're not on the Brooks team again? I'm like, well, it doesn't say Brooks on my leg, so I'm okay with that. I think like any tattoo you get, hopefully it should have some form of meaning, right? So, I mean, I have my other marathon tattoo on my other calf or the side of my leg. But every tattoo I have, 1, 2, 5 of them now, they all have meaning. It's not like I was at out drinking with the boys one night. We were like, let's go get tattoos. So, yeah.
But it was really funny because he got a little bit of flack because people thought it was a Brooks tattoo. And I was like, you know what? Even if it was, it's his body. And, leave him alone, please. Because it was a well done tattoo.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking. There was someone who was bitter who is no longer with the team, and I think basically called me out. And like, I mean, if you care about me that much, great. Sure, I'll be the person you want to reference. That's cool. There are haters in the world. It's okay.
Absolutely. So I'll share this quick story before we get into the fact that this is the most Brooks loving episode that we've ever done. But there's a guy that I work with. He's like a floor level team member, and so last year I worked for Toyota, Greg, in a sense. I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but we did start building Lexus vehicle parts last year, and our new slogan for Lexus, because it's such a high-end vehicle, was never compromise. And this new team member that he hadn't been with the company for very long, but he went and got our company logo and the words never compromise tattooed on his calf. So luckily he still works with the company, but he got a lot of crap for that. And luckily he also works in the Lexus area. So good for him. But yeah, he definitely got a lot of crap for that.
That's crazy. Yeah, and I don't get any, I don't get any residual checks for having the logo on my leg either. So it's purely for me, right?
Yeah, he doesn't either. He's not like the spokesperson. But yeah, obviously, if anybody's listened to this show on a number of occasions, they know that we do tend to bash on Brooks quite a bit. And that Jake's not here to back me up on this. But again, I said it earlier, I've been more open to Brooks lately. I've got some Brooks gear. And me and Jake have always said that we enjoy Brooks gear. It's just their shoes that we don't like. But the Brooks Ghost Max has been in my shoe rotation for the past few months. I've got 250 miles on it. I really like the shoe. So I guess this is the Brooks Show Love episode. Yeah.
And it's really funny because they were bashing Brooks right before applications closed this past year. And I couldn't say anything because I was like, I love Brooks, I'll take the flack. And when I got my acceptance email and they got their rejections, I was like, look at this, guys. Because you crap talked them.
I didn't really expect to be anyway. It was not a surprise to me.
Oh, man.
But no, and I guess the story behind my not liking Brooks and talk about the shoes some more. I was a strictly Brooks runner for a couple years and led to some really nasty injuries on my part. So before that, though, I didn't know anything about shoe technology, about what was right and wrong for, different people, different foot styles, different strides, all that stuff. So it was, I guess if I'm going to give them a compliment, if I wouldn't have gotten injured running in their shoes, I wouldn't know what I know about shoes today. So thanks to their crappy shoes, I was able to do my research and figure out what shoes actually work best for me.
I don't know how to respond. I'm not going to respond, but that's okay.
Again, 250 miles in the Brooks Ghost Maxes, so
You'll slowly come back. It's okay.
I'm slightly over it. And Josh Kerr's a beast. Brooks beasts are beasts.
Yeah.
Their DMR team just set a DMR world record a week ago. So
Yeah.
Brooks is doing big things.
Yeah.
So, Greg, okay, so for those that don't know, Brooks this year has different tiers. So there's a fitness tier, there's a fashion tier, there's a running tier, and then an alumni tier. Greg, you're in the alumni tier.
Yes.
So how long have you been with Brooks?
So officially, I've been on the team now. This is my 5th year. The year before my first, I kind of was like, they were helping me out because I had reached out late before the applications, and I told at the time the guy's name was Brian, who was the community person who ran the ambassador program, basically. And we kind of had this. They gave me like a contract for a certain amount of time, but I wasn't on the team. But when I had told them my story about my running journey and my illness and all of that, they partnered with me a little bit by giving me gear and shoes, not as much as the team gets, but a decent amount to help me get through, I think, like 8 months of the year or something like that. And then he told me when applications opened up, and that's when I applied and got accepted to the team officially. So Brooks has been really good to me, and I do like their shoes. I've run in other things before Brooks, and even Brooks while I wasn't even close to being on the team. But as I started really getting into running, Brooks is the only brand that I'll wear when I run. I mean, I wear other brands when I'm at the gym just because I need a cross trainer when I'm teaching a class, for example, versus, being in a running shoe necessarily. I don't want to roll, it doesn't have as much lateral support and things like that, depending on what I'm doing. But yeah, so yeah, 5 years, we'll say 5 officially, and then just kind of a little side there early on.
That's really cool. And we'll get into your illness in a second, but what has been your favorite thing about being on the Brooks team?
I think hands down is just like the community and the friendships I've made. Obviously, I've gotten to know you and a whole bunch of other people, and I know a lot of people that become ambassadors, not just with Brooks, but just in general. They just want like gear and stuff. And don't get me wrong, I love the gear, and Brooks is super generous to us. But it really is the community of people that I've met and I've become friends with. We travel to do races together, or we put in for the same race, and hopefully we all get to go. And everyone's so supportive and cheers everyone on, whether that's, setting a PR or just participating in a world major, even if you're going there just to complete it. Or you're a newer runner and not, you're doing it just because it's, as I say, movement's life and people like to move and stuff like that. So it's the community for me. I would ask you the same question, I guess.
No, that's what I would say too. And just, it's gotten to push me out of my comfort zones. Like I would have never thought about running in Philadelphia or, visiting Utah, and just, it's crazy because technically you meet all your friends on the Slack app. It's not like, you sought these people out at a run club. And I just really like how everybody is willing to support everyone. Everyone is willing to be in a reel. If we meet up, there's no clicks. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a good, and I guess depending on Chase, what you do with running and stuff like that, I think that's just the whole running community as a whole for the most part. I mean, my ex-wife she still cycles, but cycling is very cliquey. It doesn't matter, like, and even by gender, it's very cliquey too, like from what I understand when it comes to cycling. But yeah, I mean, you talk about Slack. I mean, it is my run club because I work on Saturdays. So most of my long runs are by myself. So seeing what people are doing on Slack kind of feeds and fuels me a little bit, or just the communications we have on Instagram or what have you. So yeah, super welcoming.
So Chase, you're part of the alter ego community.
Oh.
Do you get to communicate with anybody on your team or any ambassador programs that you have?
No, Alter Ego is still a fairly young company, so I think they're still trying to figure out what direction they want to go with their ambassador program. Jake's a lot more connected than I am, being so close to them down in Jacksonville. So like they just started putting on a lot of races, and it I'm sure that they'll continue to kind of grow their program, but right now the biggest we do get major discounts like super early. Don't get a lot of free stuff, but the discounts that we get are very good, and anybody who uses my ambassador code obviously gets me a little bit of a kickback. So it's kind of more of a traditional kind of ambassadorship. Brooks, I think, that's kind of like the gold standard of what running ambassadorships really can become. I haven't heard, I don't think I've heard of anything that does the type of stuff that Brooks does for their ambassadors or for their Run Happy team. And that's something that no matter what you think about their products, or no matter what you think about their athletes or anything like that, you can't take that away from them. Like, the fun that you guys have at those events is unmatched. And I can only hope that I can be a part of something like that one day. But I also enjoy the idea of being involved with somebody like Alter Ego at like the ground floor level, and kind of being you know committed to them at that small level, because I'm from a small town, so like the small town atmosphere kind of gets me too. So I like the underdog, I guess, what you would say.
Yeah, and I mean, we're both part of the TikTok RunTok community, which is kind of like Brooks without the swag. You have a bunch of people that just made friends on the internet and are down to meet up whenever. So
It is really crazy, like, especially when you think about the things that like Billy does it up for Chicago. Of course, that's not happening this year, but the last couple of years at Chicago, having the Run Talk meetups, he said it before, it's so weird that you just give your address out to random strangers that you met on the internet. And you think about 20 years ago, people doing that would have been crazy. But we do it now, and that's just kind of the community that has come with it, and running as a whole. And I know you said that running's not clicky. I think it is still a little bit clicky. But that's, I say it about everything. It's more of a testament to the sport as a whole and how big it's getting. People are getting faster, more people are coming to running, and with that type of thing, you get groups segregating from one another because that's just how many people are in it. So it's really is just a testament. And no matter what I say negative about any company or any influencer or anyone, it's all just a testament to how big the sport of running is getting.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I when I said like less clicky, I think what I really meant is like running is really for everyone, and people, I think at races especially, even if you have your groups, everyone's just so happy for everyone to finish. It's not, and I think that's what I mean more about that. It's more inclusive, I guess, is
Yeah, sure.
because yes, you have your groups that, your run clubs and, but there's never really a lot of animosity, right, towards each other, because everyone, you go to a race and everyone just wants someone to finish. You see these stories of someone like, struggling at the finish line, or like almost falling down, and people carrying them to the finish line. Like, because that's the thing about running. Like, I used to like feel really embarrassed with my times, and partially it was my fault because I didn't train. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm still finishing something only what 1% of the population does, or whatever the statistic is. And people are happy when you finish. They're like, it's amazing. It's such an amazing feat. I would never do that. And so on and so forth. So I think runners in general, it's a welcoming sport, I think is the better way of putting it.
Sure. And I think that's, that's also clear in all the charity work that goes into it as well. Like, obviously, Greg, you talked earlier about your issues, and you mentioned doing London. Do you do most of your races for some kind of charity for Scleroderma, or?
No. So when it comes to fundraising for Scleroderma, I do it all for I will partner with an organization, or one year I fundraised for my doctor who is doing research, but I don't right now there's none of the major races has a scleroderma charity. We may try to get one next year in New York. So I've partnered with the SRF, which is a Scleroderma Research Foundation, and they're the ones that would maybe try to create a charity with the New York Roadrunners for the marathon next year. But for the most part, my fundraising is solo. So I go to these races. So I got into London through the lottery. So so a good example is I work for Equinox, and every year we do a fundraiser called Cycle for Survival. So we raise money for Memorial Sloan Kettering for cancer research, for rare cancer research. I participate in all those events, but I don't ask people for money because I do my fundraising for my own illness. And I feel awkward asking people to double dip, but I'm very supportive of other charities. I mean, occasionally I give money to certain charities and things like that. But yeah, most of the races, anything where you would enter a race to participate with a charity, I don't do that unless Scleroderma has something going on, which we haven't had yet. So maybe one day.
So, Greg, can you tell us a little bit about Scleroderma? Is that
Yeah,
how
it's hard to pronounce. Scleroderma. So basically, scleroderma, the Latin translation is hard skin. So basically, your body, for lack of better words, deposits collagen in places it shouldn't. It's an autoimmune disease. So for some people, there's 4 primary forms. There's 2 major ones. One is called diffuse. The other one is called limited systemic, which I have limited systemic. So for me, it affects mostly my hands, my face. So basically it's like getting permanent Botox in your body in certain places. So like, for example, my face is really tight. So I can't pull my eyelid down. Like you probably can pull down on your face and your eyelid comes down where you can see like underneath where the white of your eye is. It causes the skin to tighten in my hands. For some people, it could be life-threatening. It can cause issues with the kidneys. It can cause hardening within the lungs. So lung fibrosis can lead to heart failure, messes with your GI system. So I have issues with like really bad acid reflux and some other things. And the thing about the disease is no one knows how it's going to progress. People have similar symptoms, but everyone's degree or rate of progression is different. And there's other things that are associated with it, something called Raynaud's phenomenon, which is other people with other autoimmune disease have it, like lupus. It creates kind of like these hot and cold sensations where for me, my hands will either go white or purple. Like if I'm in the grocery store and you're like, oh, it's chilly in here, I'll be like, oh my God, it's freezing. My hands are numb and my hand is white or purple. And then a bunch of other associated diseases. One of the risk factors for me as I continue to get older would be something called pulmonary arterial hypertension, which basically you're whatchamacallit, I always forget. The arteries in your lungs don't perform as well, and it creates issues with your heart and can lead to heart failure and things like that. So I get a whole bunch of tests done every year just to make sure I'm kind of tracking along normally. And I think running has been a big help. My original doctor, when I got diagnosed, said part of the reason I present really well is because I've been so active over my lifetime playing sports and physical activity and stuff. So that's a little bit about scleroderma.
What was it that led to you getting diagnosed? Like, how did you know something was coming on?
Yeah, so for a while, it was funny. My ex-wife, who I'm still friends with today, would always like make fun of my hands. She'd call my hands baby hands, and I'm like, why are you making fun of my hands? So I started having tightness in my hands. I was driving to teach a fitness class one day, and it was a Sunday, and I remember I was on the freeway, and it felt like my hand went numb, but it felt like it was like blowing up like the size of baseball or softball or something like that. And it was just numb, but it had that feeling, right? When something swells, it just feels like it's larger than it is. I went to urgent care. I got diagnosed with something ridiculous. I got diagnosed with bilateral carpal tunnel, which I'm like, come on, really? If you do any research on bilateral carpal, it is basically, I don't have a job where I'm sitting at a keyboard. The other thing is people who get bilateral carpal, a lot of the times are pregnant women. So I'm like, oh, that doesn't really fit the mold. And then I started developing these digital ulcers on my finger. I actually have one now. I have a Band-Aid on it right now. The way I describe it is if you've ever had a canker sore in your mouth, it's like having a canker sore on your finger. And they're non-contagious, but they take anywhere from 60 to 90 days to go away. It's basically an open sore, and it's like anything that touches it, it is excruciatingly painful. So I started because when I had initially went to my rheumatologist after my whole bilateral carpal thing, I have another autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's thyroid, but she's like, you need to come back in 3 months because with one autoimmune disease, there's likely to be a second. And so I started getting these ulcers and I started self-medicating. And finally my wife was like, you got to go to the doctor. And that's when I got diagnosed officially. So yeah, but it took me 2 years to go back to the doctor. I was like, I'm not going. I'm fine. Typical stubborn person.
So what is what's the treatment like for that? You said you were self-medicating for a while. You don't need to go into that detail, but like what do you do to treat it now?
First of all, I wasn't self-medicating like drinking or doing drugs. I'm talking like Neosporin and all kinds of like random stuff to try to get it better. Well, when it comes to like the digital ulcers, there's really not much you can do. I'm on this one medication that tries to open up blood flow to your fingers. It's a heart medication, really. I don't have any issues with my heart, but not what. But I don't know if it really works, but I'm on it. But like I do this mixture of like Neosporin, lidocaine for the pain, and I forgot the other thing. It's not Vaseline, but like the other brand. That's in like a blue top. I always forget the name of it. Anyways,
Vicks?
No, not Vicks.
No.
Oh my God, it's gonna come to me. I always forget it. But regardless, and then I just put a Band-Aid over it just so it's not like open and exposed. And then I deal with other things day to day. Scleroderma, like some autoimmune diseases, causes a lot of fatigue. It causes tightness in your joints and muscles and things like that because it is a connective tissue disease. So it impacts your connective tissue. So that's why a lot of people are like, you're running marathons and you have this disease. And I'm like, well, my body is able to do it. So I'm going to keep doing it until I can't do it anymore. So, yeah.
So I want to get to the Amazon documentary that you created. First of all, I watched it and it was fantastic. I made my husband watch part of it too, so he knows who you are, Greg. So what started the idea for this Amazon documentary?
Yeah, so the idea was concocted, and I think at the beginning you mentioned that I produced it. I didn't do any of the producing. There's a company called Project Scleroderma. I just want to give them credit. There's a woman who is the owner of Project Scleroderma. Her name is Christy. Her mom passed away from scleroderma, I think like 10 years, maybe 11 years ago. She found me a few years back, even before the documentary was even thought of, because a patient in Philadelphia, and she's from Philadelphia, a patient from Philadelphia saw everything I was doing with running and my fitness posts. And so Christy had reached out to me, and she was doing these public service announcements during Scleroderma Awareness Month, which is in June. And they were these 1-minute kind of PSAs. And she asked me if I wanted to do one, and I said yes. And she flew out here with this production crew, and we did this PSA. And then I started doing my marathons to raise awareness, and I was like, I need to do something on a bigger scale to gain more attention. The closest celebrity that we had involved with scleroderma was Bob Saget until he passed away, because his sister had died from the illness a while ago, back in the 90s, I think. So I was like, well, we don't have a face. So I was like, I'm going to do whatever I can do to kind of bring awareness. And I came up with this idea of running 8 marathons over the course of 1 year. And I reached out to her. She's like, have you talked to your doctor? And I said, no. And so I called my doctor. My doctor's like, well, why don't you do 4? Let's not do 8. And try to do them in warmer weather because of the issues with cold that I deal with. And Christy was like, this is an awesome idea. And she gets a lot of funding because she's a nonprofit. So she gets funding through different like pharmaceutical companies and other things. And she was able to get I guess she created a grant proposal or whatever she had to do on her end to get it funded. And we funded the project and they were only going to film, I think when we settled on all of it, it was going to be the Disney Marathon in Florida, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and then Philadelphia to end it. And they were going to film 3 of them. They were like, we don't have the budget to do all 4. So they weren't going to go to San Francisco. But the documentary started the year of the pandemic. So that completely changed the whole game because I did Disney and then we did LA. And then right the 2 days after LA, that's when everything shut down. So we missed San Francisco, we missed Philly. So then we were like, how are we going to finish this? And initially, as you probably saw in the documentary, I came up with the idea of why don't I go to Philly and run it alone? Because I was like, that could be even more of a story and we can get more news attention. But then cases started to rise in Philly. So we put an end to it for the time being. And then when things started reopening the following year, that's when we finished it. And that's when I ran LA again with the new course that I alluded to earlier in November. And then literally 2 weeks later did Philly because they were 2 weeks apart at that point. And that's how we finished the documentary. So, yeah.
So you were at Disney in 2020? I just want to make sure I got my dates right.
Yeah, Disney in January 2020. The hottest
there
race they ever had on record, too.
I was there too. All right. Maybe I snuck into one of the shots. I don't know. I'll have to watch. I'll have to check it out.
You may have. I mean, hopefully you finished because they shut the course down early because people were passing out. It was so hot.
I actually didn't. So me and my sister did the Dopey Challenge together, and my sister doesn't run as much as me, but yeah, we were one of the ones that actually got the course cut short by about a mile. So
yeah, I remember that. I mean, it was hot, and I wasn't prepared for it very well. But it was interesting. Disney was definitely an interesting race, I have to say. I'm not a huge Disney person. Like, I love Disney, but I'm not like Disney all the time, 24/7 type of person.
Sure.
It was fun. The unfortunate thing is you're only in the parks for like 10 minutes. Because
that one. So that was the second time I'd done Disney, and I don't mean to distract from the documentary at all. I'll just go into this real quick. But I did Disney in 2016, and we were in the parks a lot more than we were in 2020. So I think that the course changes a lot year to year because of the construction that goes on and all the updates that they do throughout the parks. So it just kind of depends on when you hit it. I'm doing it again next year, so I'll let you know if it changes again.
Are you going to do the Dopey?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought about it. I'm like, ooh. I'm kind of a glutton for punishment. I'll tell you about that later, but my thought, I'll never do it, but I want to do the world marathon challenge.
Mm-hmm.
7 continents, 7 countries, 7 continents, 7 days or whatever.
So Antarctica and the cold, is your body gonna be able to handle that?
Well, I mean, that's why one of the reasons, but I think more of the reason my body wouldn't be able to handle it is the 7 and 7, you know?
Right.
Like, you're recovering on an airplane. I mean, it's not great.
I'm just focused on the cold weather. I'm not even talking about doing it 7 days in a row.
Well, you get that one out of the way. It's the first one you do. So, anyways. We digress.
So how long has the documentary been up on? So is it available on Amazon? Is that what I'm understanding?
Oh, it's available on Amazon and on YouTube. And it was released last June. We got it done in time for Scleroderma Awareness Month in June. And before that, we were in a bunch of film festivals as well. And we won an award in New Jersey for one of the film festivals we were in there. So yeah, it's been up for about a year. Almost a year.
We'll be sure to link it in the description of this episode whenever we post it. So
yeah, it's hard to find. It's called Run Greg Run, so it might be hard for people to find.
Well, yeah, we'll find it and make sure people got an easy link to it there.
Yeah, no, but it was a good experience. It was fun. It was it's interesting not really being in that world, seeing how all that gets put together and how long it takes. It only ended up being about 45 minutes, but they have all this material, but you can't put all of it in because, you know, whatever makes the cut makes the cut. So yeah.
So, what was it like having people film you while you're running a marathon?
So, the weirdest one was the Disney one, to be honest with you. We got all this approval from Disney, and actually Disney like had me be part of like one of their video campaigns that people see on the buses when you come from the resort to the airport or whatever. Um, that was the weirdest one because they also had one of their own, because Disney had their own park people come with me and followed me on a GoPro, on a bike with a GoPro the whole time. Um, our camera crew had different spots in every race. So that was fine because most of the time I wasn't paying attention until I saw the camera. And it's just like anytime else you're running a race and you see the photographer, it's like, you know. Um, but the Disney one was interesting because our camera crew started at the start line and we had to do all these shots of me walking through all the competitors. And I was like, oh, this is cool. People are gonna think I'm like some famous person when I'm really not. And so, and at whatever it is, 5 a.m., whenever we start at Disney. So it was just really, that was weird. And then just the GoPro dude following me. But it was great because my headphones died at one point. So I gave the GoPro guy my headphones just to hold on to. And it was good because I was getting tired during that race. And he helped me out just in just his presence, but otherwise, I mean, it was cool. There were some weird moments like the Disney one with the camera crew. Same thing at LA because they got press passes, so they were at the start line at Dodger Stadium and following me around and stuff. That was a little bit more. It was fine, but it was just weird because there's that 20,000 other competitors, and here you are, some Joe Schmo that's not even the grand marshal of the marathon, and you're being followed around. So yeah, it's fun.
So, have you been able to connect with a bunch of other people with your illness, like across the world? Like, is there a community?
Yeah, so there's a lot of there's a lot of support groups, but a lot of people find me on social media and reach out to me, and it's either a patient themselves or it's someone who's like a relative or a friend of a patient, and they're like, I'm sharing your story with them, it's so inspiring, so on and so forth. Funny enough that we're recording this right now is on Friday I'm flying to Chicago because I'm speaking at a patient education conference for scleroderma. So for Chase, I don't know if you know, but I also, when I got diagnosed, I went back to school and I got my master's, and then I got my doctorate in public health in lifestyle management and preventive care to help people not only with my illness, but facing, any kind of illness or challenge in their life to live a better and healthier life. So I'm actually doing a whole speech on living with scleroderma and goal setting and, mindset and things like that. So I do interact with people. One of the pharmaceutical companies had me out to their headquarters in Connecticut last year. And I did an event it was really cool because I got to see all the labs where they do research to do, create medications and stuff. And I did a speech and was kind of like an interview one-on-one panel with a doctor for all the people who work in that kind of group at the headquarters. So that was kind of cool too. So, yeah.
So when you say helping them with like goal setting and mindset, people with other kind of illnesses, what are you talking about there? Like, what kind of things do you target when you're giving those kind of speeches?
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's in a larger group, it's kind of, getting people to understand like where they are and where their mindset is. So I'm a nationally board certified health and wellness coach. So I do a lot with people one-on-one about, figuring out where they're ready to make change, because just because someone wants to like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym every day, some people aren't really ready when it comes to like there's the readiness scale of willing to take action, not ready to take action, so on and so forth. So really trying to help people focus on where they're ready to make a change, and how to incrementally do it, because we all make like New Year's resolutions at the beginning of the year and they all fail because everyone's like, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week. I'm going to run 3 marathons. And they have this whole list and none of them are really attainable because they they don't know how to set the steps, the whole like SMART framework, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. So getting people to understand how to really do that, but based on what they want, not what, people tell them they should be doing, because a lot of people also choose to make changes based on what they think is socially acceptable or what their doctor might have told them, which granted, their doctor might be right in certain situations, but there are other underlying factors that prevent them from making the change and being able to uncover those as well. So it's kind of a holistic approach. Like, just because you have diabetes, for example, and you should be changing your diet to lose weight to, and get more physical activity to improve your health condition, you may be dealing with a lot of stress because you have family issues, or you might have financial issues. And those things are what's causing you not to be able to take action, because everything's intertwined. So I help people with understanding those aspects of their life in order to make change, rather than just, I'm going to go run a marathon. Okay, well, why do you want to run a marathon? There's questions that need to be asked. So when I do this, I don't tell them what to do. I help them uncover their own intrinsic motivation in order to make those changes possible.
That's awesome. I think a lot more people in life could use that type of guidance. And, I know that obviously you're targeting the people you are because of your experience, but, that's a very, like you said, a holistic approach that a lot of human beings should take.
Yeah. I think we always put the cart before the horse, and I'm guilty of it
For
too.
sure.
There's times in my life I'm like, I'm going to do this, and I don't have a game plan, and I don't do it. I fail, and that's okay. I think people also need to realize it's okay if you don't succeed at something. But there's a way, maybe there's something else you need to succeed at, and you just haven't hit the right thing first. So yeah, not everything's linear. That's the one thing I've realized in life. Even races, they're not linear. That's why there's tangents everywhere, and my watch never matches up at the finish line. And I'm like, I PR'd by 5 minutes, not 1.
So speaking of goals, this can be any goal, Greg, but what is one thing you want to accomplish by the end of 2024?
That's a good question. I think if I put it in different buckets, I need to choose another race. I haven't chosen a new race to do. I don't think this is my year to qualify for Boston, but I want to continue to improve. I would love to try to get down to 3:30 if I can, or at least under 3:40, which is 8 minutes off of my last one, which I think is doable. So I would say that's one goal for me. The other goal is just like my own health and wellness. I mean, I'm human. I slip on certain things. So right now my diet hasn't been the best. I'd like to make some improvements on that. I think the only other thing I want to do is try to find more balance in my life. I don't have enough balance in my life when it comes to, like work and pleasure and things like that. So I think that's the other primary goal for me. Yeah.
Nice.
And
Good
raise
stuff.
more awareness, but that goes hand in hand every year, So, yeah.
Well, Greg, is there anything you would like to talk about before we sign off?
No, I mean, I appreciate you guys having me on and talking about the documentary and obviously linking it. You can also, if you want to give them my social media, because I'm happy to talk to anyone. They don't have to have scleroderma. But, I think we kind of hit it before when we were talking about like running being more inclusive than other sport communities. I always say, as cliche it is everyone's a runner. And I truly believe that. Like, you don't need to, be a Boston qualifier to be a runner. And there's no shame in finishing in 4 hours and 50 minutes or 5 hours or, doing 2 hours and 20 minutes. That's great. Everyone's dealing with their own thing. And I think in the world we live in, just in general, and I hope everyone can realize that, we're so I feel like everyone's in a competition for something when we don't need to be. And I think I like that these platforms are available, because especially you guys doing a podcast on running, because it's such a great community. And I hated running. I mean, when I was a wrestler, I hated distance running. I was in the back with the heavyweights when we had to do like 6 miles towards the end of preseason. And I was literally chugging up the hill with the heavyweights. And I was like, I'm never going to run distances. And it's funny how like things change, and, you know, finding something that you like to do, that you love to do, and finding people who are like-minded, I think is great. So yeah, that's all else I think I need to say about that.
Okay, one
But,
last question.
yeah.
What is your favorite race distance, and why is it the half marathon?
It's not the half marathon. It's funny because I think since last year, I'm like the only, unless I get into a major, I'm only running half marathons. The problem is I run a half marathon and I feel like I underachieved. I'm like, why didn't I do a full? I think half marathons are great because it's like, it's just enough before you get to like, oh my God, what am I doing? Because at mile 15, it's usually like, why did I decide to do this? But then when I'm done with a full, I'm like, I need to do another one. Or when I'm done with a half, I'm like, why didn't I do the friggin' full marathon? Like, am I just a loser? I'm not, like, what am I selling myself short? But I do like doing halves too. Maybe if we check back in a few months and I've run a 5K or 10K, I may say that, ooh, I love 5Ks or 10Ks now. But I'm a full
Nobody
guy.
likes 10Ks. Nobody likes 10Ks.
No.
It's got to sprint it, right? So it's like,
It's 5K is a sprint. 10K is like trying to find out how to sprint but also run a half marathon. It's like it just sucks.
yeah, I think, halves are great. I think for me personally, I think doing the full, it's such a, and I guess for some people it could be the same thing with the half. It's such a mental thing, and it's one of those things where if you like to challenge yourself and you are if you're a competitive person, because I'm not going out to win. I mean, I know that I'm winning by finishing, right? But I'm not going out. I'm not going to beat, Kipchoge or whoever and set a record for 2:02 or something like that, or 1:59. Because usually I look at my watch and it's 2 hours and I'm at mile 17. I'm like, they're done. I'm still running. But I think there's just something that lights that fire in me doing a full. And it makes me want to get better and better and better. And I think halves can do that too, because I've definitely challenged myself to best my half times. But I think because so few people want to do a full marathon, it's just that extra little mental thing that gets me.
Yeah, I was giving you a hard time. So Chase, Jake, and my favorite distance is the half. So we're trying to like convince everybody to join the team.
Listen, I'll do halves with you. I have no problem. Just at the end, remember, I'm going to be like, why didn't I do the full?
You just run the course again,
You make a good point, and I think part of the reason that we run halves is because we feel like we can just jump into one next weekend and have fun with it. That's why we like them so much. Whereas, but the full marathon does give you that sense of accomplishment that no matter how good or bad you do, you're at the finish line of something that very few people in the grand scheme of things do. So.
And just one last thing, maybe to get you guys back onto the full boat, is you get a nicer medal, you get a better tech shirt, and sometimes you get other gifts like a towel and a beer mug. So by doing a full compared to a half, so extra.
Or sometimes they run out of stuff because all the half people got done before you, and not saying that's ever happened to me or anything, but
no.
So, Greg, you mentioned social media earlier. Where can everybody find you, or what can they find you at?
Yeah, I mean, I predominantly live on Instagram, Gregory_Cohen. And then I'm on Facebook, Gregory Cohen. I have a TikTok, but I'm not a big TikToker. Honestly, I still haven't figured out how the children use it yet. So I'm an old man. I'm 45. But Instagram and Facebook mostly. Yeah. And then, I'm redoing my website, so I don't have that all done yet. So it's got a whole different website address. So cool.
Excellent. Well, this has been an exciting episode of RunTok Live. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram. Oh heavens, we're everywhere.
YouTube.
At RunTok Live. Yeah, YouTube. You can email us at runtalklive@gmail.com. We've actually had people email us recommending guests they want to have on the podcast, which has been kind of nice. You can find me on Instagram at Carolyn M. Levenway or TikTok at Carolyn McDuff. Chase, where can people find you?
Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, kind of getting back into YouTube, but Chaser No Pacer, anywhere that you can find me.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Greg, for hanging out with us. It was a pleasure. And thank you to the listener for joining us on another episode of RunTok Live.
Deuces.
All right.